The boardroom fell silent when Marcus Zeller told them he was wrong. For 40 years, Marcus had built Apex Manufacturing from a single factory floor into a $17 billion empire spanning 3 continents. He had never missed a quarterly projection, never lost a major contract, never apologized for a decision. His certainty was legendary in industrial circles. People said Marcus Zeller could see around corners, that he understood manufacturing the way conductors understood symphonies. But on that Tuesday morning in March, standing before his board of directors in a suit that cost more than most cars, the 62-year-old billionaire admitted he had been completely, utterly wrong about automation. "The Portland facility is hemorrhaging money," he said, his voice steady despite the admission burning in his throat. "I pushed for full automation too quickly. The numbers were compelling on paper, but I ignored the human element. I ignored transition costs. I was certain, and my certainty cost us $47 million last quarter." His CFO cleared his throat. His COO studied the table. Marcus had spent 4 decades never showing weakness, and now he stood exposed, waiting for the knives to come out. Instead, his VP of operations, a sharp woman named Patricia, spoke up. "What do you need?" "A consultant," Marcus said. "Someone who understands lean manufacturing and workforce integration. Someone who can tell me what I am not seeing." That afternoon, Patricia sent him 3 candidates. Marcus rejected the first 2 immediately. Too established, too much like him. Too certain. The third resume made him pause. Brielle Chapman, 29 years old, master's in industrial engineering from MIT, 5 years at McKinsey before going independent. Her client list was impressive, but selective. What caught his attention was a quote she had given to Manufacturing Today magazine. "The problem with most factories is not that they resist change. It is that leadership becomes so invested in being right that they forget to be curious." Marcus read that line 3 times. Then he told Patricia to set up a meeting. Brielle arrived at Apex headquarters on a Thursday morning carrying a leather portfolio and wearing a navy suit that was professional without being stuffy. She had dark curly hair pulled into a low bun, warm brown skin, and eyes that took in everything with disconcerting focus. Marcus watched her through his office window as Patricia escorted her through the executive floor. She did not gawk at the view or the expensive art. She was looking at the workflow, at how people moved through the space, at the bulletin boards and the coffee stations. When Patricia brought her into his office, Brielle shook his hand firmly and met his eyes without hesitation. "Mr. Zeller, thank you for the opportunity. Miss Chapman, please sit." Marcus gestured to the chair across from his desk, but Brielle glanced at the small conference table by the window. "Would you mind if we sat there instead? I find desks create unnecessary hierarchy." It was a small thing, but it surprised him. Most consultants tried to impress him. She was already trying to change the dynamic. Marcus found himself agreeing, moving to the conference table. "Tell me what you know about our Portland situation," he said. Brielle opened her portfolio. "You invested $83 million in automated systems over 18 months. You reduced headcount by 40%. Production capacity increased by 12%, but actual output decreased by 8%. Defect rates tripled. Your workforce satisfaction scores dropped to historic lows, and you are experiencing 22% monthly turnover among remaining employees. You have done your homework. I also know that 5 years ago, you successfully automated your Detroit facility with almost none of these problems. So the question is not whether automation works. It is why the same strategy failed in Portland." She looked at him directly. "Do you know the answer?" Marcus felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. "I thought I did. Now I am not sure I know the right questions." Brielle smiled, and it transformed her face from professional to radiant. "That is the wisest thing you have said, according to my research. Your research on me, of course. You have given 47 interviews over the past decade. I read them all. You use the word certain an average of 8 times per interview. You have built your reputation on conviction." She leaned forward slightly. "But certainty and wisdom are not the same thing, Mr. Zeller. Anyone else saying that would have sounded condescending." From her, it sounded like an observation, curious rather than judgmental. "Call me Marcus." "Brielle." She extended her hand again across the table, and they shook a second time, this one feeling more like a partnership forming. "So what do I need to do?" Marcus asked. "You need to go to Portland with me, not as the CEO making inspections, as someone willing to listen, really listen, to the floor workers, to the supervisors, to the engineers. You need to be uncertain long enough to find actual answers. How long will this take? However long it takes. Could be 2 weeks, could be 2 months." Brielle tilted her head. "Are you willing to commit to that?" Marcus thought about his schedule. The board meetings, the investor calls, the strategic planning sessions. 40 years of filling every hour with decisions and direction. "Yes," he said. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. Meet me at Portland International at 7 in the morning. Dress like you are ready to spend time on a factory floor, not in an executive suite." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the airport in jeans and a polo shirt, feeling oddly exposed without his armor of tailored suits. Brielle was already there, wearing canvas pants and a simple blouse, her hair in a practical ponytail. She had 2 coffees waiting. "You look almost human," she said, handing him a cup. "Should I be insulted?" "Only if you think being human is an insult." She grinned at him, and Marcus found himself returning the expression. The Portland facility sprawled across 40 acres of industrial park outside the city. Marcus had visited 3 times since the automation project began, always with an entourage, always with presentations prepared. This time, he and Brielle simply walked in through the main entrance like regular employees. The floor supervisor, a stocky man named Tom who had worked at the facility for 15 years, looked shocked to see Marcus without his usual parade of assistants. "Mr. Zeller, we were not expecting you." "Good," Brielle said before Marcus could respond. "We are not here for an inspection. We are here to understand. Can you show us the production line?" For the next 4 hours, they walked the factory floor. Brielle asked questions constantly, not just of supervisors but of line workers, maintenance staff, quality control technicians. She wanted to know what had changed, what frustrated them, what they wished leadership understood. Marcus stayed quiet mostly, watching her work. She had an incredible ability to make people comfortable, to ask questions that got past defensive answers into genuine responses. But what struck him most was that she listened completely. No glancing at her phone, no thinking about the next question. She was absolutely present. By lunch, they had filled 2 notebooks with observations. They ate sandwiches in the break room, and Brielle spread her notes across the table. "Do you see the pattern?" she asked Marcus. He studied the pages, looking for the insight she had clearly already found. "They feel disrespected. Deeper than that." Marcus read more carefully, then it clicked. They were not consulted. "We brought in the automation, retrained them on new systems, but never asked them how to integrate their expertise with the new technology. We treated them like replaceable parts instead of assets." "Exactly." Brielle tapped her pen against the notepad. "You have experienced engineers who understand the quirks of your production process. But the automation system does not account for those quirks. So the workers either override it, which creates inconsistency, or they let it run and produce defects. Either way, They feel useless. When people feel useless, they leave or they stop caring. So how do we fix it? We ask them to help us fix it. We create integration teams that include floor workers, engineers, and system programmers. We treat this as a collaboration, not a replacement. She looked at him steadily. But that means you have to be willing to admit this failed because of your approach, not their incompetence. Marcus absorbed that. 4 decades of being the smartest person in the room had made it easy to blame execution when his strategies did not work. That is going to be uncomfortable. Most worthwhile things are. Brielle smiled at him. But I have seen your interviews. You are not afraid of hard work. Just of being wrong, apparently. Everyone is afraid of that. You are just more honest about it than most billionaires. They spent the afternoon in meetings with different teams, and Marcus did something he had not done in years. He listened more than he spoke. He asked genuine questions. He admitted that his plan had been flawed. The responses were cautious at first. Workers who had been steamrolled by corporate mandates did not immediately trust this new approach. But Brielle had a gift for drawing people out, and Marcus found himself learning more in one afternoon than he had in months of reports and presentations. That evening, back at their hotel, they met in the lobby restaurant to debrief. Marcus had changed into casual clothes, and Brielle wore jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger and somehow more formidable at the same time. "You did well today," she said after they ordered dinner. "I felt completely out of my depth." "Good. That means you were actually present." She sipped her wine. "Can I ask you something personal?" Marcus nodded. "When did you stop being curious?" "Because the man who built Apex from nothing had to be intensely curious. But somewhere along the way, you became certain instead." The question hit harder than he expected. Marcus thought about it while their food arrived, while they started eating. Finally, he said, "About 20 years ago, I had just closed a major acquisition. Risky move. Everyone told me I was wrong, but I knew I was right, and I was. After that, I started trusting my gut over everything else. It worked for a long time, until it did not." "Until it did not," he agreed. "What about you? You are young to be this good at what you do." Brielle laughed. "Is that a polite way of asking how a 29-year-old ended up consulting for billionaires? Maybe. I had excellent mentors, and I learned early that being right is less important than finding the truth. My father owned a small manufacturing shop. He was brilliant but stubborn. Refused to adapt when the market changed. Lost everything when I was in college." She met Marcus's eyes. "I watched certainty destroy him, so I built my career on questioning everything. That must have been hard. It taught me what matters, not ego, not being the smartest person in the room. Just solving real problems for real people." She paused. "Is that too earnest?" "No," Marcus said, and realized he meant it. "It is refreshing." They talked through dessert about manufacturing, about business philosophy, about life. Marcus found himself sharing stories he had not thought about in years. The early days of Apex, when he worked 100-hour weeks and slept on a cot in his office. His brief marriage in his 30s that ended amicably but sadly. His realization, a decade ago, that he had built an empire but forgotten to build a life. Brielle listened with that same complete attention she gave everyone, and Marcus felt seen in a way he had not experienced in years. When they finally said goodnight, standing by the elevators, Brielle touched his arm lightly. "Thank you for being willing to do this, to really do it. Most people in your position would hire me and then ignore everything I said." "I am starting to think that would have been the bigger mistake," Marcus said. Her smile stayed with him all the way to his room. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Days at the facility, working with teams to redesign the integration of human expertise and automated systems. Evenings debriefing over dinner, their conversations ranging from technical details to personal stories. Marcus found himself looking forward to those dinners more than anything else. Brielle was brilliant, but it was not just her intelligence that drew him. She was curious about everything, quick to laugh, unafraid to challenge him. She made him think differently, feel differently. Around her, the certainty that had defined him for 40 years felt less like strength and more like limitation. He was also acutely aware of the 33-year age gap between them. Brielle was young enough to be his daughter. She was a consultant he had hired. Every rational part of his brain told him to maintain professional boundaries, but his heart was becoming increasingly irrational. 3 weeks into the Portland project, they hit a breakthrough. One of the integration teams, led by a veteran machinist named Sarah and a young programmer named Dev, presented a solution that elegantly combined automation efficiency with human oversight. It addressed the quality control issues while giving workers meaningful roles in the new system. Marcus listened to the presentation with growing excitement. This was not just a fix for Portland. It was a model for how Apex could approach automation everywhere. When the meeting ended, he turned to Brielle, who was practically glowing. "This is incredible. They did incredible work. We just gave them permission to do it." "You gave them permission. You showed me how." Marcus felt something swell in his chest, gratitude mixed with something deeper. "Brielle, I need to tell you something." She looked at him with those perceptive eyes. "Okay." But they were still in the conference room with people milling around outside. This was not the right moment. Tonight, dinner, somewhere nicer than the hotel restaurant. A flicker of something crossed her face. Uncertainty, maybe, or hope. All right. Marcus made reservations at a waterfront restaurant with a view of the Willamette River. He changed 3 times before settling on dark slacks and a button-down shirt, feeling like a teenager preparing for prom. This was ridiculous. He was a 62-year-old billionaire who had negotiated with heads of state. Why was he nervous about dinner with a consultant? Because she was not just a consultant anymore. He knew that. He just was not sure if she knew it. Brielle arrived wearing a dark green dress that brought out the warmth in her skin, her hair loose around her shoulders for the first time. Marcus forgot how to breathe for a moment. "You look beautiful," he managed. "You look nervous," she said, but her smile was gentle. "Should I be worried?" "Probably." He pulled out her chair and they sat overlooking the river as the sun set over Portland. They ordered wine and food, making small talk about the day's breakthrough, the implementation timeline, the teams they had been working with. But there was a charge in the air that had nothing to do with manufacturing. Finally, over the main course, Marcus set down his fork and said, "I am going to be honest with you, because you have taught me that certainty is overrated, but honesty is not." Brielle stopped eating, her attention completely on him. "These past 3 weeks have been the most enjoyable of my life," Marcus said. "Not just professionally, though watching you work is astonishing, but personally. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I think about you constantly. You make me laugh. You make me question myself in the best way possible. You make me feel alive in a way I had forgotten was possible." He paused, gathering courage. "I am 62 years old. You are 29. You work for me technically. There are a dozen reasons why I should not be saying any of this. But I am tired of letting fear masquerade as wisdom. So I am telling you, even if it is wildly inappropriate, that I have developed very serious feelings for you." Brielle was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "Can I tell you what I was thinking the first time I met you?" Marcus nodded, bracing himself. "I thought you were the most handsome man I had ever seen in person. Silver hair, strong jaw, these incredibly intense blue eyes. I had to remind myself to be professional." She smiled slightly. Then you opened your mouth and I thought, oh no, he is smart too. That is not fair. Marcus felt hope kindle in his chest. Over these weeks, Brielle continued, I have watched you be vulnerable, be curious, be genuinely kind to people who have every reason to resent you. You listen now. Really listen. You have let yourself be uncertain, which takes more courage than being certain ever did. She reached across the table and took his hand. So yes, there is an age gap. Yes, our professional relationship complicates things. But I am 29 years old, Marcus. I am old enough to know what I want, and I want to see where this goes. Marcus felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. You do, I do. She squeezed his hand. If you are willing to be uncertain about one more thing, he laughed, the sound surprising him with its genuine joy. I think I can manage that. They left their food half-eaten and walked along the waterfront as evening settled over the city. Marcus held Brielle's hand, marveling at how natural it felt, how right. They talked about everything and nothing, pausing on a bridge to watch boats glide down the river. I have never done anything like this, Marcus admitted. I was married once briefly, but mostly I have dated women at my level, corporate types, very planned, very strategic. How did that work out? Terribly. Turns out relationships based on strategy instead of feeling do not last. Brielle leaned against the railing, looking up at him. So what is this based on? Honestly, you terrify me, in the best way. You challenge everything I thought I knew about myself. He touched her face gently. And you make me want to be someone worthy of you. You already are, she said softly. Marcus kissed her then. They're on the bridge with the Portland lights reflected in the river below. It was gentle at first, tentative. But then Brielle wrapped her arms around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like certainty and uncertainty tangled together, like coming home to a place he had never been. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Brielle said, we should probably talk about the logistics. Ever the consultant. Someone has to be practical. But she was grinning. You are still technically my client. Then we finish the Portland project first, professionally. After that, we see each other as equals. You are a billionaire CEO, I am a consultant. We are not exactly equals. You are the wisest person I have met in 40 years, Marcus said firmly. That makes you more than equal. They walked back to the hotel holding hands, and Marcus felt something he had not experienced in decades. Genuine happiness. Not satisfaction with an acquisition or pride in quarterly results. Just simple, profound happiness in being with someone who made everything better. Over the next month, they maintained careful professional boundaries during work hours. But evenings were theirs. They explored Portland's restaurants and coffee shops. They hiked in Forest Park. They stayed up late talking about dreams and fears and the strange paths their lives had taken. Marcus learned that Brielle loved terrible reality TV shows and good whiskey. That she was terrible at sports but loved watching basketball. That she wanted kids someday but only if she could be a present parent, something her own father had struggled with. That she was secretly writing a book about organizational change, but was too insecure to show anyone. Brielle learned that Marcus played piano beautifully, but only when alone. That he had wanted to be an architect, but fell into manufacturing by accident. That he regretted not having children, but was not sure he would have been a good father given how consumed he had been by work. That he was genuinely lonely, despite being surrounded by people constantly. They fit together in ways that surprised them both. The age gap that seemed so significant on paper felt irrelevant in practice. Marcus did not feel old around Brielle. He felt awakened, and Brielle did not feel intimidated by his wealth or status. She treated him like Marcus, not like the Marcus Zeller whose name appeared in business journals. The Portland project wrapped up successfully. The new integration model was working. Production was up, defect rates were down, and most importantly, workforce satisfaction had improved dramatically. Marcus presented the results to the board with Brielle beside him, and for the first time in his career, he gave credit publicly to someone else. This turnaround was entirely because of Brielle Chapman, he told the board. She saw what I could not see and had the courage to tell me I was wrong. Apex owes her a tremendous debt. After the meeting, Patricia cornered him in the hallway. "You are different," she said. "Better or worse?" "Better, more human," she studied him. "It is the consultant, is it not?" Marcus did not bother denying it. "Yes. Good. You needed someone to shake you up. Just do not screw it up by being your usual controlling self." Noted. That evening, Marcus took Brielle to his favorite restaurant in Manhattan, a small Italian place he had been going to for 30 years. The owner, Giovanni, greeted him like family and gave Brielle a knowing look that made her blush. "Over pasta and wine," Marcus said. "I want you to meet my sister." Brielle looked surprised. "You have a sister?" "I have 3 siblings, actually. I am not close with them, but my younger sister Rebecca and I talk regularly. She lives in Connecticut. I thought maybe we could drive up this weekend. You want me to meet your family? I want you to be part of my life, fully, if you want that too." Brielle reached for his hand. "I do. But Marcus, we need to talk about the practical stuff. I am based in Chicago. You are in New York. I have clients all over the country. How do we make this work?" "You could relocate to New York. I could give you enough consulting work to make it worth your while." "I do not want you to be my only client. That is not healthy professionally or personally." "Then we figure it out together. Maybe I spend more time in Chicago. Maybe we meet in the middle sometimes. Maybe we stop overthinking and just try." He smiled at her. "I am learning to be uncertain, remember? You are a terrible student," she teased. "You are being very certain about us." "That is different. I am certain about how I feel. I am uncertain about how we make it work, but I am willing to try anyway." That weekend, they drove to Connecticut. Rebecca lived in a rambling colonial house with her husband and 3 teenage kids. She opened the door and stared at Marcus for a full 5 seconds before pulling him into a hug. "You look happy," she said. "Actually happy, not just satisfied." "I am happy," Marcus agreed and introduced Brielle. Rebecca welcomed her warmly, and over the course of the weekend, Marcus watched Brielle charm his entire family. She played card games with his nieces and nephew. She helped Rebecca cook dinner. She asked genuine questions about their lives and interests. On Sunday afternoon, while Brielle was helping the kids with a school project, Rebecca pulled Marcus aside. "She is special," Rebecca said. "Do not mess this up." "That is what Patricia said. Patricia is smart. Listen to her, listen to Brielle, and Marcus, stop being so scared." "I am not scared. You are terrified. I can see it. You are afraid this is too good to be true, that the age gap matters more than it does, that you do not deserve this." She gripped his arm. "But you do deserve to be happy, and that woman in there loves you. I can see that too." Marcus felt his eyes sting. "How do you know?" "The way she looks at you, the way she talks about you, the way she fits into your life like she was always meant to be there." Rebecca hugged him. "Just do not overthink it. For once in your life, just let yourself be happy." Over the next 6 months, Marcus and Brielle figured out their rhythm. She relocated to New York but maintained her consulting practice, taking on selective clients who interested her. Marcus started traveling less, delegating more to his executive team. They spent weekends exploring the city, visiting museums and trying new restaurants and walking through Central Park. Marcus introduced her to his world carefully, knowing that dating a billionaire came with scrutiny. But Brielle handled it with the same grace she handled everything else. She was comfortable at charity galas in designer gowns and at neighborhood diners in jeans. She treated everyone from board members to baristas with equal respect. 8 months into their relationship, they took a trip to Italy. Marcus had business meetings in Milan, but they extended the trip to explore Tuscany. They stayed in a villa overlooking vineyards, eating incredible food and drinking local wine and making love with the windows open to the warm evening air. One night, sitting on the terrace under a sky full of stars, Marcus said, "I love you." Brielle turned to him, her eyes bright. "I love you too." "I did not think I would ever feel this way again. To be honest, I did not think I had ever felt this way before, but you have changed everything." He took her hand. "I know we have not been together that long. I know there are people who will say I am too old, or you are too young, or we are moving too fast. But I do not want to be uncertain about this." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple, elegant diamond ring. "Brielle Chapman, will you marry me?" She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more certain about anything in my life." "Then yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Marcus slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, and later they danced on the terrace to music playing from his phone. Two people who had found each other against all odds. They married 4 months later in a small ceremony at Rebecca's house in Connecticut. Marcus wore a classic tuxedo and cried when Brielle walked down the makeshift aisle in her elegant white dress. Her father, who had rebuilt his business after losing everything, walked her down with tears in his eyes. It was intimate and perfect, just family and a few close friends. Patricia was there, beaming with pride. Tom from the Portland facility gave a toast about how Brielle had saved not just the factory but Marcus himself. Rebecca cried happy tears and told Brielle she had always wanted a sister. For their honeymoon, they went to New Zealand, spending 3 weeks hiking and exploring and being completely unplugged from work. Marcus could not remember the last time he had taken more than a week off, but with Brielle beside him, it felt natural to let go. When they returned to New York, they combined their lives fully. Brielle moved into Marcus's penthouse apartment, though she insisted on redecorating to make it feel like theirs, not his. She filled it with plants and color and life. Marcus, who had lived in monochrome luxury for years, found he loved the warmth she brought to everything. They fell into a new rhythm. Marcus still ran Apex, but he was more thoughtful now, more willing to admit when he did not have all the answers. He implemented the Portland model across all Apex facilities, always with Brielle's philosophy of collaboration over mandate. The company thrived not despite his uncertainty, but because of it. Brielle continued her consulting work, but she became increasingly interested in teaching. A year after they married, she was invited to be a visiting professor at Columbia, teaching a course on organizational change. Marcus attended her first lecture, sitting in the back of the hall and marveling at how she commanded the room, how students hung on her every word. Afterward, he waited outside the lecture hall and took her hand. "You were incredible. You are biased. I am proud. There is a difference." He kissed her temple. "Have you thought more about the book?" She had finally shown him her manuscript 6 months ago, a brilliant analysis of how companies could balance efficiency with humanity. Marcus had read it in one sitting and immediately connected her with a publisher he knew. The book was scheduled to release the following spring. "I am nervous about it," Brielle admitted as they walked through campus. "What if people think I am just trading on your name? Then they are idiots. You were brilliant before you met me. I just gave you a bigger platform." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "But I wanted to ask you something." "Okay. You said once that you wanted kids. Do you still want that?" Brielle's expression softened. "I do. Do you?" I am 64 years old, Brielle. I will be in my 80s when they graduate high school. That is not what I asked. Marcus thought about it, really thought about it. For 40 years he had been certain children did not fit into his life, but that certainty, like so many others, had been based on fear rather than wisdom. I want a family with you, he said. However that looks. Biological kids, adoption, whatever feels right. I want to build something that matters more than quarterly earnings. They started trying for a baby that month. It took a while, and there were moments when Marcus worried his age would make it impossible. But 14 months after their wedding, Brielle woke him at 3 in the morning, crying and holding a positive pregnancy test. Marcus held her, feeling a joy so profound it was almost painful. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby," she repeated, laughing through tears. The pregnancy was smooth, though Marcus was absurdly overprotective. He wanted Brielle to stop working immediately. She rolled her eyes and continued consulting and teaching until her 8th month. He went to every doctor's appointment, asked 1,000 questions, read every parenting book he could find. "You know, most of these books contradict each other," Brielle said one evening, watching him take notes in the margins. "I am trying to be prepared. You are trying to be certain. But parenting is going to require you to be uncertain all the time." She took the book from him. "We will figure it out together, like we figure everything out." Their daughter was born on a snowy February evening. They named her Maya, and Marcus held her in his arms, feeling like his entire life had been leading to this moment. She was perfect, tiny and fragile, and absolutely perfect. Brielle had never looked more beautiful than she did in the hospital bed, exhausted and radiant, watching Marcus bond with their daughter. "You are already a wonderful father," she said softly. "I am terrified I will mess this up. You will mess some things up, so will I. But we will love her through it." She held out her arms. "Now give me my daughter before you hog her all day." Those first months with Maya were the hardest and most rewarding of Marcus's life. He reduced his hours at Apex dramatically, wanting to be present for every moment. He changed diapers and did midnight feedings and walked the apartment at 3 in the morning, soothing a crying infant. His board worried he was losing his edge. Patricia told them to shut up. "He has not lost his edge," she said in one meeting Marcus was not present for. "He has found his center. And his leadership has never been better because of it." She was right. Marcus approached business differently now. He was more patient, more willing to develop people rather than just manage them. He prioritized long-term sustainability over short-term gains. He treated Apex like a legacy he wanted to be proud of, not just a machine for generating wealth. When Maya was 6 months old, Brielle's book was published. It became an unexpected bestseller, landing on the New York Times list and generating speaking invitations from around the world. Marcus watched with pride as his wife became a respected voice in business leadership circles. "I could not have done this without you," she said after a particularly successful book launch event. "You absolutely could have. You did not need me for this. Maybe not to write it. But to have the courage to publish it, to put myself out there, I needed you believing in me." She kissed him. "We make each other braver." On their 2nd anniversary, they celebrated quietly at home with Maya asleep in her nursery. Marcus gave Brielle a necklace with 3 interlocking circles representing their little family. She gave him a photo album she had been secretly compiling, 2 years of their life together captured in images. They went through it together on the couch, pointing out favorite moments. The Portland Bridge where they first kissed, their wedding day, the hospital when Maya was born, countless small moments that added up to a life. "I was looking through my old interviews," Marcus said. "The ones you read when you were researching me. I sounded so arrogant." So absolutely certain about everything. You were not arrogant, just stuck. You unstuck me. Brielle leaned against him. You did that yourself. You were willing to change. A lot of people never are. I am glad I was wrong, Marcus said. About automation, about being certain, about thinking I did not need anyone. Being wrong led me to you. And us, Brielle added, nodding toward the baby monitor. And us, Marcus agreed. 2 years later, they had a son. They named him Daniel, and Maya was absolutely fascinated by her baby brother. Marcus, now 68, found he had more energy for parenting than he ever expected. He taught Maya to play piano. He read to Daniel every night. He was present in a way he had never been for anything except work. Apex continued to thrive under his leadership, though he had started the process of succession planning. He was not ready to retire, but he wanted to ensure a smooth transition when the time came. Patricia was the obvious choice, and he had been mentoring her carefully. Brielle had transitioned from consulting to full-time teaching, accepting a permanent position at Columbia. Her second book was in progress, this one about balancing professional ambition with personal fulfillment. She wrote in the early mornings before the kids woke up, and Marcus loved watching her work, her face focused and content. On a Saturday afternoon when Maya was 4 and Daniel was 2, the family went to Central Park. It was one of those perfect autumn days, leaves turning gold and red, the air crisp but not cold. Marcus pushed Daniel on the swings while Brielle helped Maya climb on the playground equipment. Watching them, Marcus felt overwhelmed by gratitude. 6 years ago, he had been successful but empty, certain but hollow. Now his life was messy and chaotic and absolutely full. Maya ran over, her dark curls bouncing. "Daddy, watch me go down the big slide." "I am watching, sweetheart." She climbed up and slid down with a shriek of joy. Marcus caught her at the bottom, swinging her around while she laughed. Again, she demanded, and he let her run back to the ladder. Brielle came over with Daniel, who immediately reached for Marcus. "Dada." Marcus took his son, holding him close. "You are getting so big." "He is going to be tall like you," Brielle said. "Or smart like you." "Why not both?" She smiled at him, and Marcus thought about how that smile had changed his entire life. That evening, after the kids were asleep, they sat on the balcony of their apartment overlooking the city lights. Marcus had his arm around Brielle and she had her head on his shoulder. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Marrying someone so much older. Your friends are traveling and going to clubs. You are home with babies." "I am exactly where I want to be," Brielle said firmly. "Age is just a number, Marcus. What matters is that we love each other, that we are partners, that we build a good life together, which we have." "We do," Marcus agreed. "I just want you to be happy." "I am incredibly happy, are you? More than I ever imagined possible." He kissed the top of her head. "You made me a better person. You were always a good person, just a little lost. You found me." "We found each other," Brielle corrected. As they sat there, Marcus thought about the man he had been 6 years ago. So certain, so controlled, so focused on being right that he had forgotten how to be fully alive. Brielle had taught him that wisdom was not about certainty. It was about curiosity, humility, and willingness to change. He had spent 40 years building an empire. But in 6 years with Brielle, he had built something far more valuable. A family, a real partnership, a life that mattered not because of his wealth or success, but because it was filled with love. "What are you thinking about?" Brielle asked. "How wrong I was about everything that mattered. And how glad I am that I was wrong." She tilted her face up to kiss him. "Best mistake you ever made." "Second best," Marcus said. "The best was admitting I did not have all the answers." "That was pretty good," Brielle agreed, "though I personally think the best decision was hiring me." Marcus laughed. Definitely that. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights, feeling the warmth of shared life. Marcus was 70 years old now, but he did not feel old. He felt alive, grateful, and utterly certain about one thing. He had spent 40 years being wrong about what mattered, and he would spend the rest of his life being thankful that a younger, wiser woman had taught him the difference between certainty and truth. Years passed in the beautiful chaos of family life. Maya started school and showed an aptitude for music like her father. Daniel was curious about everything, constantly asking questions that reminded Marcus of Brielle. Marcus gradually transitioned leadership of Apex to Patricia, staying on as chairman but stepping back from day-to-day operations. On his 75th birthday, his family threw him a party. His siblings came, now genuinely close after years of Marcus actually making time for relationships. Rebecca gave a toast about how her brother had finally learned what mattered. The Portland team sent a video message about how the integration model had transformed not just their facility but manufacturing practices across the industry. But the best moment came when Maya, now 11, played piano for the gathering. She performed a piece Marcus had written years ago but never shared with anyone. Brielle had found the sheet music and secretly taught Maya to play it. As his daughter played, Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Brielle took his hand and Daniel hugged his leg. This was everything. This was why being certain had been such a prison. Because certainty left no room for this kind of unexpected joy. After the party, after the guests left and the kids were in bed, Marcus and Brielle sat in their bedroom. She was reading, and he was just watching her, grateful for the 1,000th time that she had walked into his office that day. "You are staring," she said without looking up from her book. "You are worth staring at." She looked over at him, smiling, still charming after all these years. "I love you," Marcus said. "More every day. I did not know that was possible, but it is." Brielle put down her book and moved closer to him. "I love you too. You know that, right? Even when I am frustrated about you forgetting to load the dishwasher or arguing about bedtimes, I love you completely. Even though I am old, you are not old, you are experienced," she grinned. "And you keep up with the kids better than I do sometimes. That is just stubbornness. One of your best qualities." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for building this life with me, for being willing to change. For being uncertain long enough to find what was real. Thank you for teaching me how," Marcus said. They held each other, two people who had found each other across an unlikely gap of age and experience and expectation. The billionaire who had spent 40 years being certain had learned that wisdom was not about having all the answers. It was about being brave enough to admit you did not, and humble enough to learn from someone who saw the world differently. Marcus fell asleep that night with his wife in his arms, his children safe in their rooms, his life full of the kind of richness that had nothing to do with bank accounts. He had built Apex into a $17 billion empire, but his greatest achievement was right here. A family built on love, respect, and the willingness to be uncertain together. Years later, when Marcus was 80 and Brielle was 47, they sat on the porch of the house they had bought in Connecticut, not far from Rebecca. Maya was in college studying music. Daniel was in high school talking about engineering. Marcus had fully retired, and Brielle had just published her 5th book. "You ever think about that first meeting?" Brielle asked, holding his hand. "When I told you certainty and wisdom were not the same thing." "I think about it often," Marcus said. You were right about everything. Not everything, but the important things." She squeezed his hand. "We built something good, did we not? We built something extraordinary." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the trees, two people who had found each other when neither was looking. The younger woman who had wisdom beyond her years. the older man who had finally learned that being certain was less important than being open. Together, they had built a life that neither could have imagined alone. A life full of love, laughter, mistakes, and grace. A life that proved wisdom was not about age or experience or never being wrong. It was about being brave enough to change, humble enough to learn, and wise enough to cherish what really mattered. And what really mattered was sitting right there, holding his hand as the day faded into evening, still teaching him, still loving him, still making every day better than the last. Marcus had spent 40 years being certain. He would spend the rest of his life being grateful that he had learned to be uncertain just long enough to find the love of his life. The woman who had changed everything. The partner who had shown him that wisdom was not about always knowing the answers. It was about asking better questions, staying curious, and building a life that honored what was real rather than what looked impressive. "I love you," he said to Brielle as the stars began appearing overhead. "I love you too," she replied. "Always have, always will." And Marcus, who had once needed to be certain about everything, was absolutely certain about one thing. He was the luckiest man alive, not because of his wealth or his success, but because he had been wise enough, finally, to let himself be uncertain. And in that uncertainty, he had found everything that truly mattered.